Kethvar had never trusted the humans. It wasn't because they were hostile, or rude, or uncooperative, in fact. They were the opposite. They smiled too easily, laughed in the middle of tense meetings, and acted as if danger was just another inconvenience to get through before lunch. Keth's instincts told him that their calm wasn't confidence. It was something deeper, something colder. The humans didn't fear the galaxy like other council species did, and that, to him, was dangerous. For years, the Galactic Council had treated Earth as a respectable but minor Alaya planet that joined late, contributed modestly to defense fleets, and followed orders without much question. But every now and then, in between political speeches and trade negotiations, Keth would catch glimpses of something in human behavior that didn't fit the image they projected. They were too good at pretending to be weak. The first whispers began in the quiet corridors of the council spire, a small patrol outpost along the far border. It sent a distress signal cut short mid-transmission. Long-range scans revealed a fleet moving fast, too fast, toward council space. At first everyone assumed it was a pirate wave. Then the reports came in. This was no pirate force. It was the Kareth Dominion, a species that the council had clashed with a century ago and barely survived.
Back then,
it had taken the combined fleets of 8 worlds to push them back. Now, they were returning stronger, and with no warning, council chambers erupted in panic. Orders were given, fleets were mobilized, and the skies over every core world filled with ships preparing for war and Earth. They sent 3 ships. Cap sat in the observation lounge, staring at the deployment lists in disbelief. 3 small cruisers barely larger than civilian cargo vessels had been dispatched from the Sol system. No reinforcements, no carriers, no massive dreadnoughts, just 3 ships. And then silence. Every other ally had thrown every warship they could muster toward the approaching threat, but humans simply acknowledged the council's request, promised to do their part, and then disappeared from the conversation.
Oh.
Keth didn't know whether to call it arrogance or madness, but the unease in his chest grew heavier by the hour. When he tried to bring his concerns before the council, the reaction was laughter and dismissal. The Lothari delegate waved a clawed hand and told him that humans just don't have the resources. For major fleet engagements, the Selker ambassador chuckled, saying if they had more ships, they'd have sent them. Even the High Speaker of the Council leaned forward and said, Keth, humans are emotional creatures. They'll do what they can, but they're not a decisive factor here. Keth didn't argue further, but inside, he knew they were all wrong. That night, unable to sleep, Keth accessed the deep space listening grid, a classified array that caught stray transmissions across light years. Most of it was static. Broken bursts of comms chatter from fleets already engaged at the frontier. But then he heard it 3 words, repeated once in a cold, steady human voice.
I begin phase 1.
The message was wrapped in a code so advanced that the council's systems couldn't even identify the encryption method. He played it again and again, feeling the hairs along his neck stiffen. Humans weren't improvising. Humans weren't panicking. They were following a plan. Hours later, as the Kareth Dominion's main force closed on the first Council defensive line, news came of something strange. Several Dominion Vanguard squadrons had been destroyed, wiped out completely before. Reaching their targets? No one could explain it. No Council fleet was close enough to intercept them. Theories ranged from navigational errors to internal sabotage among the Dominion ranks, but Keth suspected differently. He tried to trace the coordinates of the destroyed squadrons and found they were all within an uncharted region of space, far from any known military patrol routes with growing unease. Keth left the Council spire and boarded his personal scout vessel. He plotted a course toward the unknown region,
ignoring the automated warnings about unnecessary risk and Council priority directives.
His instincts screamed that whatever was happening out there, the humans were involved. Much the closer he drew, the more his ship's sensors picked up strange readings, faint power signatures, possible energy spikes, and the faint distortion of space that hinted at advanced cloaking technology. This was no accident. Something massive was moving in the dark. And then they found him. His comms panel lit up with a signal so strong it made his ship's systems flicker. A voice, crisp and calm, spoke through the channel. Unidentified. Council vessel, you have entered restricted space. Cut engines immediately. Before he could respond, something emerged from the void, a head, a shape so vast it seemed to block the stars. As it drew closer, its outlines sharpened into an enormous warship, unlike anything in the Council's archives. Its black hull reflected almost no light, its armor studded with weapon ports and angular structures that looked more like predatory fins than antennas. A second later, 2 more ships of equal size uncloaked beside it, and on the central ship's command deck, visible through a massive armored viewport, stood a human in a dark uniform, watching him with unreadable eyes. And the voice returned, this time warmer, almost amused. Kethvar, welcome aboard. We've been expecting you. The docking clamps of the massive human warship closed around Keth's scout vessel like the jaws of some metal predator. The motion was smooth, precise, yet there was no mistaking the feeling that he was now in the grip of something far stronger than himself. As the airlock cycled and the pressure equalized, he half expected to be greeted by an armed squad, weapons raised and faces cold. Instead, the hatch slid open, and 2 humans in dark uniforms stood there, unarmed but with a posture that made it clear they didn't need weapons to be dangerous. Ambassador Var. One of them said in a voice that was polite, almost casual, the captain is waiting for you. They led him through long corridors lined with smooth matte black panels. No windows, no viewport, only the occasional soft glow of status displays showing weapons, grids, and energy readouts he didn't recognize. Everything about the ship radiated quiet, lethal efficiency. Keth had been aboard dozens of Council warships. In his career, from sleek Selker frigates to the massive battle cruisers of the Thrawn Confederacy, this was different. Council ships felt like machines built for combat. This ship felt like a living thing built for victory. When they finally reached the command deck, Keth's eyes were drawn immediately to the panoramic viewport at the front. It wasn't just one ship. Outside, stretching into the darkness, were dozens of similar warships, silent, black, and utterly without identifying markings. Some were so massive they could have held entire cities inside their hulls. Others were smaller, fast-looking, their hulls shaped like blades. All of them floated in perfect formation, their positions shifting slightly, as if in response to some unspoken signal. The captain stood in the center of the deck, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on a tactical display showing the positions of the Kareth Dominion fleet. He turned as Keth approached, a faint smile crossing his face. Ambassador, he said, I trust you found our little hiding place without too much trouble? Keth didn't answer right away. He was still taking in the scale of what he was seeing. This he finally managed. This isn't possible. The Council has no record of ships like these. Where did they come from? How? The captain raised a hand, cutting him off gently. The Council knows what we've let them know. Nothing more. He gestured toward the display, where red icons marked the Dominion's vanguard squadrons. While the Council argues over fleet allocations, we've been preparing for this day. Keth's voice hardened. Why hide this? If the Council had known, they would have wasted it, the captain said, his tone flat. Thrown ships into battles they couldn't win, scattered our strength trying to protect every minor outpost while the enemy regrouped. The Council plays politics. We play for survival. Outside the viewport, a ripple of distortion shimmered. Across the stars, and 3 more human ships appeared out of nothingness, their cloaking fields collapsing as they joined formation. Keth stared at them, his mind racing. Cloaking of that level was beyond anything the Council had achieved, beyond anything they had even imagined. On the tactical display, one of the Dominion squadrons was closing in on a Council colony world. Keth opened his mouth to warn the captain, but the man was already issuing orders. Strike Wing 6, intercept. Target engines and come relays. No survivors. Keth felt a chill run down his spine. No survivors. The Council doesn't... This isn't a Council operation, the captain interrupted. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. We don't leave threats alive to regroup. Within minutes, the strike wing was gone, vanishing. Into hyperspace, without a flash or flare, the Dominion icons on the display shifted as their formation broke apart. Reports from Council fleets began to filter in confused, fragmented messages about enemy ships exploding mid-flight or vanishing from sensors altogether, in the Council chambers light years away. Keth knew they would be trying to piece together the mystery. Aboard this black armored Leviathan, there was no mystery. The humans were moving faster than the Dominion, faster than the Council. And they were striking where it mattered most. Hours passed in tense silence as the hidden human fleet advanced deeper into Dominion-controlled space. Keth watched as each enemy formation they encountered was dismantled with ruthless precision. No drawn-out battles, no attrition, just clean, surgical destruction. At one point, he turned to the captain. "You've been planning this for years. Decades," the captain corrected. "Since before Earth joined the Council." Keth blinked. "Before? Then this fleet." The captain's smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Council never asked if we had fleets of our own. They assumed what we showed them was all we had. We let them assume. Outside, the dark warships shifted formation again, preparing for a new hyperspace jump. The coordinates were locked in deep inside Dominion space, far beyond any Council fleet's reach. "Where are we going now?" Keth asked. The captain's answer was simple, almost casual. "To end this war before it reaches the Council's doorstep." And with that, the fleet vanished. One moment, 100 ships floated silently in formation. The next, they were leaving nothing behind but empty space and a faint distortion in the starlight. Keth stood in stunned silence, feeling the deck hum beneath his feet as the ship slipped through hyperspace. He didn't know if he should feel relief or dread. If the humans succeeded, the Council would be safe. But if they had always possessed this kind of power and kept it hidden, then the galaxy had been living under an illusion. As the hum of the engines deepened, Keth realized another truth. If the humans failed, no one else would be able to stop the Dominion. And if they succeeded, the Council might never again be the ones truly in control. The captain must have sensed his thoughts, because he spoke without looking up from the tactical display. "You've seen too much to go back to the way things were, Ambassador. This is over, you'll understand why we kept our secret, and you'll understand why we'll never give it up." Keth swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the distant glimmer of stars ahead. Somewhere out there, the Dominion's core fleet was waiting. And somewhere even deeper, beyond his sight, lay the true limits of human power limits he was starting to suspect the galaxy had never even come close to seeing. Hyperspace was never silent, not to those who had traveled it often enough to feel its strange pressure on the skin and hear the faint vibrations in the bones. But the humans' hyperspace drive was different, to smooth, to steady, as if they had somehow tamed the chaotic currents between stars. Keth stood near the panoramic viewport, watching streaks of distorted light bend and ripple around the hull. He'd made hundreds of jumps before, but this one felt deliberate, controlled. Even the way the ship emerged from hyperspace was unsettling. No violent lurch forward, no flicker in the lights, just a clean, silent arrival into normal space. And then Keth saw them. The void ahead wasn't empty. It was filled with ships, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They hung in perfect order, layered across 3 dimensions in a vast sphere of formation. Some were colossal city-sized carriers with armored bays yawning open to reveal smaller attack craft waiting like predators in the dark. Others were long, angular destroyers bristling with weapon ports, their hulls dark except for faint lines of running lights. Above and below them, sleek stealth ships glided like shadows, barely visible even against the black backdrop of space. Keth's breath caught in his throat. This is impossible," he whispered. "No one builds a fleet like this without the entire galaxy knowing." The captain joined him at the viewport, his expression unreadable. "No one but us." Keth turned toward him sharply. "Resources, the technology, sheer manpower. How could you hide this from the Council?" "We didn't hide it," the captain said simply. "We just never showed it. The Council saw what we allowed them to see. handful of ships here. A minor defense contribution there. They assumed that was all we had. He gave a faint smile. We encouraged that assumption. Out beyond the flagship's hull, a cluster of heavy battleships shifted position, their drives glowing faintly as they moved to create an opening in the formation. Through it, a massive vessel emerged from hyperspace's ship so large it dwarfed even the biggest carriers. Its hull shimmered faintly as if it was bending light around itself. Along its flanks, entire sections rotated, revealing arrays of weapons Keth didn't even recognize. That, the captain said quietly, is the Aegis Dawn. She's the first of her class. Her main cannon can shatter a planet's crust in one shot, though we don't use it unless we have to. Wah! Keth stared at the giant in horrified awe. The Council has nothing that even comes close. That's the point, the captain said. Keth forced himself to step back from the viewport. You've been preparing for this war long before it started. This wasn't defense. This was inevitability. The captain's eyes locked on his. The galaxy is dangerous, Ambassador. The Council talks about unity, about peace. But every century a new predator rises. We got tired of reacting, so we prepared. Not for one war, for every war.
Ash!
Keth's mind raced. If this was the humans' true fleet, then every battle they had fought beside the Council before now had been theater. The small deployments, the limited engagements, all of it had been part of the illusion, and it had worked perfectly. Why? Show me this? He asked finally. The captain didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned toward the tactical display, where a holographic projection of the Dominion's main fleet shimmered in red. Because you're going to witness what happens when we stop holding back. The fleet began to move. Not with the disorganized chaos of a rushed Council deployment, but with the precision of a machine. Lines of destroyers and cruisers peeled away from the outer formation, slipping into hyperspace one after another, their jumps synchronized to the second. Carrier groups shifted to the rear while smaller attack craft launched in waves, scattering into stealth formations that vanished from sensors almost instantly. Keth recognized some of the maneuver's flanking patterns, encirclement strategies, but others were completely alien to him, fluid movements that seemed to defy traditional fleet tactics. It was as if the humans had rewritten the entire language of war. As the operations unfolded, Keth's communicator chimed. It was an encrypted Council channel. The voice of the high speaker crackled through. Ambassador Var, where are you? We're receiving conflicting reports. Dominion ships are being destroyed in deep space some before our fleets even arrive. Do you know anything about this? Keth glanced at the captain, who made no move to stop him from answering. I might have an idea, Keth said carefully. Then explain, the high speaker demanded. We need to coordinate. If Earth has ships in the field, Madam Speaker, Keth interrupted, his voice low. Earth doesn't have ships. They have an armada, and it's not what you think. There was a long silence on the line before the speaker replied, her tone suddenly wary. What exactly are you telling me, Ambassador? Keth looked back at the captain, who met his gaze with calm certainty. I'm telling you, Keth said slowly, that the humans have been preparing for a war the Council never saw coming, and they are fighting it. Without asking your permission, the speaker's voice sharpened. Ambassador Var, you will return to the Council immediately. The captain cut in, his voice cold but polite. That won't be possible. Without another word, he reached over and ended the transmission. Keth stared at him. He just cut off the high speaker. She doesn't need to know where we are. Not yet. Outside the viewport, the first wave of human ships reappeared from hyperspace, their formations shifting as they prepared for another strike. Each one carried the silent weight of overwhelming firepower, and each moved with the quiet confidence of predators who already knew they had one. Keth realized, with a slow creeping dread, that the Dominion might not even be the most dangerous force in this war. The most dangerous force might be the very fleet he was standing on, the one that had hidden in plain sight for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. As the flagship turned toward the heart of Dominion space, the captain spoke. Again, almost casually. Watch closely, Ambassador. You're about to see why Earth has always been underestimated. The Dominion fleet was vast thousands of ships stretched across light years, their formations locked in perfect geometric order, like a wall of steel and fire sweeping toward the heart of Council space. To the average strategist, it was an unstoppable advance. To the humans aboard the Aegis Dawn, it was just a pattern waiting to be broken. Keth stood at the edge of the command deck, watching as streams of red icons representing Dominion vessels moved steadily across the tactical display. Beside them, smaller blue icons human strike groups slid like shadows into position. They were vastly outnumbered, but their movements were fast, unpredictable, almost chaotic. Keth had seen war simulations before, but never like this. Strike. Group 7, cut in at Vector 148, 90% power, the captain ordered. His voice was calm, almost detached, as though he were directing a training exercise rather than a battle that could decide the fate of the galaxy. The Dominion fleet never saw them coming. Cloaked destroyers pierced their outer perimeter, firing, once and vanishing before the enemy could lock weapons. Stealth craft slipped between capital ships, planting charges that detonated with surgical precision, crippling engines and weapons arrays. Each move was calculated not to destroy everything in sight, but to dismantle the enemy's ability to fight. Keth's eyes darted from the viewport to the display. "You're not trying to overwhelm them," he said slowly. "You're dismantling them." The captain nodded. "You can't crush an enemy like the Dominion with brute force alone. They breed ships faster than most species breed people. But they can't replace experience, command structure, or the will to fight. We break those, and the rest collapses." Through the viewport, Keth caught flashes of light explosions, blooming silently in the dark. A Dominion cruiser spun out. A formation, its engines trailing burning plasma. Another simply vanished, swallowed by the blinding flare of a direct hit from a railgun slug moving at a fraction below light speed. And all the while, the human fleet moved like water, flowing through gaps in the Dominion's lines, striking, vanishing, striking again. The Dominion tried to adapt. Keth watched as their formations shifted, their ships clustering together to protect one another. The captain didn't even blink. They're closing ranks. Strike Wing 4, herd them into Sector 9. Herd them, Keth echoed, bewildered. "You'll see?" Minutes later, the Dominion's tight formation entered the specified sectora stretch of space that looked no different from any other. Then Keth saw the faint shimmer ahead. Mines, thousands of them, hidden in the black. Drifting silently for years, maybe decades, waiting for the right target. The moment the Dominion ships crossed the threshold, the mines activated. The sector erupted in light. Keth flinched as entire squadrons were vaporized in seconds. The survivors scattered in panic, their perfect formation shattered. "That sector wasn't on any map," Keth said, his voice unsteady. "It's ours," the captain replied. "We've been seeding traps for a long time. The Dominion just walked into one of the biggest." Keth could hear the chatter short, precise bursts of human voices reporting kills, damage, and movement. There was no hesitation, no confusion. Every ship knew its role. Every pilot trusted the others without question. It was the kind of coordination Keth had never seen in any Council fleet. An alert flashed on the displaying enemy command carrier. Was retreating, escorted by heavy destroyers. The captain's gaze hardened. "That's their sector commander. Take him alive if possible. Destroy him if not." Keth frowned. "Alive? Why?" "Information," the captain said simply. "Every war is won twice, once on the battlefield and once in the mind. We take their commander, we break their spirit faster than their hulls." A pack of human interceptors broke from formation, streaking toward the carrier. The Dominions. Escorts opened fire, filling the void with deadly streams of plasma, but the interceptors darted through them like ghosts, using micro-jumps to appear and vanish within seconds. Keth had never even heard of a micro-jump system small enough to fit on a fighter in less than 5 minutes. The carrier was dead in space, its engines gone, its escorts destroyed. A boarding team moved in, and moments later, the captain's "come" officer confirmed the target was secured. Keth couldn't stop staring. If the council had this kind of capability, they don't, the captain said firmly. And they never will. You've seen what happens when politics gets in the way of survival. We don't take that risk. The battle stretched on. For hours, but to Keth, it felt like minutes. Every time the Dominion tried to regroup, they were hit from another angle. Their supply ships destroyed before they could reach the front, their communications jammed into silence. And yet, what struck Keth most was what the humans didn't do. They didn't waste shots. They didn't chase fleeing ships if it meant exposing themselves. Every action was measured, deliberate war as a form of cold mathematics. Finally, the last of the Dominion's forward fleet broke and retreated, vanishing into hyperspace. The tactical display shifted, the sea of red icons thinning until only a few stragglers remained. The human fleet held position, weapons ready, but no one pursued. Keth turned to the captain. You could have chased them, could have wiped them out. The captain's expression didn't change. Not yet. Let them run. Fear will do the rest. They'll spread stories of ships they couldn't see, weapons they couldn't counter. By the time we strike again, they'll be expecting to lose. Keth felt an uneasy chill. You fight to win battles, but you also fight to break the mind. The only way to win wars, the captain replied as the fleet began to regroup. Keth knew the council had no idea what was really happening out here. They would hear of a Dominion defeat, perhaps even credit their own scattered fleets for the victory. They would never know that the humans had done it almost entirely alone and that this was just the first strike. Keth looked out at the black-armored ships surrounding him, their hulls scarred but still deadly. Somewhere inside him, awe and fear warred for dominance. And for the first time, he wondered if the galaxy would be safer when the Dominion was gone, or if it would simply be trading one master for another. The chamber was silent, yet the tension inside it was sharp enough to cut through steel. The Galactic Council had gathered, every member seated in their high curved chairs, eyes fixed on the center of the floor. There on the polished metal surface stood Ambassador Keon from Earth. He was calm to command that alone made the Council uneasy. For months, they had been struggling to understand how humanity kept surviving battles that should have crushed them. Every other species had taken severe losses against the target threat. But humans, they endured. Some council members whispered that Earth had been lucky. Others suspected something darker. Today, they were about to find out the truth. Council. Leader Viral leaned forward, his scaled hands clasping the edge of his desk. Ambassador Keon, he began, his voice slow and deliberate. Our intelligence networks have found anomalies in your battle reports. Ships destroyed in minutes. Enemy fleets retreating before contact. This is not consistent with your claimed capabilities. His reptilian eyes narrowed. Are you withholding something from us? Keon's expression didn't change. His voice when he spoke was level and unshaken. We've given you all the information necessary to coordinate our joint defenses. Necessary, Viral repeated, tasting the word like it was poison. Is not the same as complete. He glanced at the others. Our analysts believe Earth's military strength is far beyond what you have admitted. And if that is true, then you have deceived this council perhaps for years. A ripple of murmurs passed through the chamber. Some were outraged. Others were intrigued. The Sorin delegate, an avian creature with sharp golden eyes, tilted her head. If they have been hiding strength, perhaps it is because they do not trust us. At that, Keon allowed himself a small, knowing smile. Trust, he said, is earned. He slowly stepped forward into the center light. And let me be very clear, Earth has trusted no one fully. Not yet. The murmurs grew louder, some council members visibly bristling. Viral slammed a clawed hand on the table. Then speak. What are you hiding? Keon looked around the chamber, his gaze passing over every face, letting the silence stretch until it became almost unbearable. Then, he said something that made the entire room lean forward. We've been holding back. The words hit like a thunderclap. For a moment there was stunned quiet, as if the sentence needed time to settle into their minds. Then came the questions shouted. hissing, clicking from beaked mouths and mandibles. Kian raised a hand and they reluctantly fell silent. You think you've seen human war? He continued. You've seen patrol fleets, emergency deployments, reserve ships pulled from dockyards, but you have never seen Earth commit its full force. You've never seen what we bring when we fight without restraint. Viral's voice was low now, almost a growl. Kian's eyes hardened, because the galaxy wasn't ready, and maybe it still isn't. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and a projection bloomed above the chamber floor. It was a massive formation rows upon rows of dark, angular warships, each bristling with weapons that didn't match any known design. The ships looked like shadows given form, swallowing light around them. Their hull markings were unfamiliar. To any species present, these are not in your records, the Soren delegate whispered. No, Kian said. They aren't. They've never left our system. They've been waiting, watching, training. Paused, letting the image rotate slowly for all to see. We built them because we knew one day the threats wouldn't just come from enemies. Like the Targoth, they might come from closer than we'd like. Several delegates stiffened. The meaning was not lost on them. Viral's voice rose again, sharp with accusation. You prepared for war against us. Kian's gaze met his without flinching. You prepared for war against anyone who threatens humanity. It's nothing personal, it's survival. If the Council truly worked for peace, you'd understand. The room fell into heavy silence again, but this time it was different. The tension had changed. Some members were frightened, some were furious, and some were quietly impressed. The avian delegate broke the silence. If this is true, then Earth's restraint has been considerable. Kian nodded once. We wanted to see if cooperation was possible without revealing everything. But the Council's constant suspicion has brought us here, so now you know. And you also know that if humanity ever unleashes its full fleet. He let the words trail off, the image of the dark warship speaking louder than anything else could. Viral leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing to slits. This changes everything. Kian gave the faintest smile. Yes, it does. Inside, every member of the Council wondered the same thing if Earth had been holding back all along. What would happen the day they finally stopped? The Council chamber was silent. It's not the usual kind of silence, the one that came after routine debates or dull trade agreements, but the kind of silence that felt like the air itself was holding its breath. All eyes were on the center of the chamber, where Earth's representative stood. The humans had been quiet through most of the meeting, letting the other worlds speak, argue, and accuse. Now, for the first time, their voice would break the stillness. Ambassador Kane didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. Even in a galaxy filled with species that could hear across entire starships, there was something about a human voice, spoken calmly in the middle of tension, that made everyone lean forward. You think you know what humanity is? Kane began. You think you've seen what we can do? You think the battles you fought with us showed our full strength? They didn't. The chamber shifted uneasily. One representative from the Volth clutched the side of their podium. You saying you've been holding back? They asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Kane didn't smile, didn't deny it either. We've let you see what we wanted you to see, he said, because the truth would terrify you. Whispers erupted in the chamber. The Urak delegate's claws clicked against the floor, a sound of growing anxiety. The Ralkan warlord narrowed. His eyes, you bluff, he growled. No species hides their strength when at war. Kane finally looked directly at him, and something in that gaze, something that didn't belong to a diplomat, made the warlord's voice falter. No. Species hides their strength, Kane repeated slowly, unless the war they are preparing for is not this one. The words landed like a drop of ice in the room. Delegates exchanged sharp glances. A war not this one? What could that mean? Kane took a step forward, his voice carrying across the chamber without raising a decibel. Fought alongside you. We defended your colonies. We bled with your soldiers. But all of that was training. That broke the chamber into chaos. Some shouted in disbelief, others in anger. The Arvari envoy slammed a fist on their podium, demanding proof. But Kane simply waited for them to settle, his expression never changing. You wanted the truth, he said. Here it is. We have fleets you've never seen, soldiers you've never met, weapons you couldn't imagine. We kept them hidden, not from fear of you, but because we didn't need them to win here. Someone from the council demanded to know who the real enemy was. Kane only shook his head. You're not ready to know that. Not yet. But understand. The reason Earth joined your wars was not to save you. It was to prepare us. The shock hit the room in waves. If what Kane said was true, every battle they had fought with humans had been humans fighting at a fraction of their true power. A chilling thought crept into the minds of every delegate. If this was them holding back, what would it look like if Earth decided to unleash everything? Finally, Kane's voice softened, but that only made it worse. We will keep fighting with you, he said. But do not mistake our patience for weakness. The day we stop holding back is the day this galaxy changes forever. And with that, he stepped away from the center of the chamber, leaving the council in stunned silence.
Oh, no one dared to speak for several moments.
Every representative there knew something had shifted, not in politics, not in alliances, but in the very balance of fear that held the galaxy together, far beyond the council's grand halls. Hidden in the cold darkness of space, fleets sat waiting, massive warships that had never been named in public. Stations armed with weapons not even the bravest scientist had imagined. And deep in the heart of Earth, in places no outsider had ever been allowed to see, humans were preparing for a war whose name had not yet been spoken aloud. The galaxy now understood one terrible truth. The humans they knew were only the surface, and under that surface was something the stars themselves might fear.